BlackRock's support for climate and social resolutions falls sharply, reported the Financial Times on 23rd of August 2023. I pricked up my ears at this, not only as ESG is an especial bugbear of mine, but because I've been tracking with great interest its apparent fall from grace among its hitherto champions, the titans of global finance, BlackRock and Vanguard, as discussed in recent videos Get Woke, Go Broke and the End of ESG, both linked in the description. The Financial Times went on to say, BlackRock's support for shareholder proposals on environment and social issues fell sharply for the second year in a row, as it refused to back resolutions it deemed too didactic or pointless. The world's largest money manager voted in favour of just 26 such proposals globally at companies' annual meetings in the 12 months to June, equivalent to roughly 7% of the total. That represented a significant decline from last year, when it backed 22% globally, and the 21 proxy season when it voted in favour of 47%. BlackRock is quoted as claiming its support has fallen because so many shareholder proposals were overreaching, lacking in economic merit, or simply redundant. I maintain now, as I did in March this year, video linked in the description, that the sudden reticence in the big asset managers around ESG has nothing to do with economic merit. If this was the case, this ludicrous program of social engineering would never have been adopted in the first place. And that the backpedaling has a lot more to do with sustained attacks from Republicans in the US, accusing BlackRock of being too woke, to quote the Financial Times article, and what CEO Larry Fink recently called a weaponized use of the term ESG by both the right and the left. In short, they've been rumbled. People have caught on, and the game is up. People everywhere, people like you and people like me, have been having conversations about ESG, and quite rightly, it's getting a bad rap. Moreover, big fund bosses may be starting to realise that the billions of pension fund dollars they've been staking on insane social justice and green initiatives cannot be justified from a fiduciary standpoint, and this could mean big trouble for them in the short term if investors get wise. Until recently, a combination of buoyant economic conditions and shareholder naivety meant that the time horizon on sustainable investing was medium to long term. And we can surmise that in the process of sniffing each other's farts and drinking Klaus Schwab's Kool-Aid, the fund bosses and their pals at the WEF truly believed that woke capitalism was the way to achieve their great reset. It would, however, appear that things have not gone exactly to plan, as things never do when centrally controlled along stringent ideological lines. They overextended themselves, and now the enemy is closing in. But what does all this have to do with the Holocaust? In 1944, a curious pantomime took place at the SS concentration camp town of Theresienstadt, 40 kilometres north of Prague, in what is now Czechia. In an attempt to deceive a visiting delegation of the Red Cross, the Reich Security Main Office, RSHA, and its menial functionaries in the Theresienstadt camp administration embarked upon a great beautification of the ghetto. As the ostensible reason for deporting Jews from Germany and occupied Europe, manual labour, seemed implausible in the case of senior citizens, Theresienstadt was billed from the start as a spa town where elderly German Jews could retire in safety. As such, the ghetto naturally spawned its own propaganda application and became part of the clumsy web of deception spun by the Nazi bureaucracy, chiefly within the Reich itself. But with mounting pressure from occupied Denmark and Sweden, whom the Foreign Office and Wehrmacht wished to placate for strategic reasons, the RSHA was persuaded after much stalling to allow a visit from the Red Cross, and thus extend the deception to the international stage. An elaborate renovation project was ordered, and overseen by the Ghetto Council of Jewish Elders, prisoners planted gardens, painted housing complexes, renovated barracks, and developed and practiced cultural programs for the entertainment of the visiting dignitaries to convince them that the seniors' settlement was real. In actual fact, Theresienstadt was little more than a transit camp, a way station for Jews from all over Europe on their way to the main centres of slave labour and extermination. Despite the gaudy hyperbole, the Red Cross delegation was taken in by the hoax and returned favourable reports to the international community. This urged the ever-enterprising German leadership onto even greater propagandistic endeavours, and a documentary film of life in the beautified ghetto was commissioned. With the German collapse quickening, however, the project was first fast-tracked and then abandoned altogether, and the completed film was never even screened. By mid-1944, the Red Army had penetrated deep into Poland, threatening the Third Reich's primary killing centre, the vast complex of Auschwitz-Birkenau. And Theresienstadt was quickly emptied of its remaining inhabitants, so they could be sent east for special treatment while the machinery was still intact. This capricious behaviour is typical of totalitarian states comprised of various competing agencies who broadly share the same endgame but have diverging ideas on how to arrive there, and who vie for ascendancy within their closed system. Adolf Hitler is well known to have actively facilitated this jockeying for position amongst his various subordinates, as he sensed that their infighting would lessen the likelihood of a coup against him. Never was this cross-pollination of policy-making more evident than in the dying months of the Third Reich, and we can see it in the final fate of the Theresienstadt ghetto. By 1944, it was clear to all but the most naive Nazi functionaries that the elimination of European Jewry was a state priority, and as such, the Foreign Office and Propaganda Ministry supported this goal. But by their way of thinking, such an undertaking could only be deemed a success if they maintained the nominal goodwill of the international community, even their enemies, and so for them, the cover-up was the most important aspect of the program. The SS, however, was unconcerned with diplomacy and PR, and more interested in getting the job done, completing the task allotted to them by the Führer. To the SS, the completion of the program itself superseded any such niceties. Thus, as the determining agency, they deemed the propaganda film a nice-to-have, but ultimately immaterial to the mission's success. Such is the tug-of-war between competing factions within a totalitarian bureaucracy, and, as is often the case, where sleight of hand and grand illusion failed, brute force won the day. I wonder if we're seeing the same thing now with ESG. Could it be that the mandarins of the New World Order preferred the PR victory, like the officials in Hitler's Foreign Office, but their chosen means of sorcery and grand illusion through the soft power of ESG has become redundant in the face of growing public awareness and a deteriorating economic landscape? Could it be that, like the Theresienstadt movie, ESG is becoming a mere nice-to-have? Could it be that the underwriters of the Great Reset, like the SS leadership in 1944, have no more time for these half-measures and propagandistic subterfuges? Could it be that woke has outlived its usefulness? Could it be that, as with the approach of the Russians in the East, they've seen the writing on the wall and are anxious now to finish the job while they still have the means to do so, and by whatever means necessary? Perhaps I'm overplaying the analogy, as I'm wont to do as a World War II geek and great believer in the rhyme of history. But having watched the space closely for the past few years, the parallel appears to me to be valid. Things are destabilizing, and we would be fools to believe that Schwab, Gates, Blair, Soros and the rest have this thing 100% mapped out, or indeed that they act as a single monolithic block. It is in fact a virtual certainty that the menace we face is comprised of several loosely affiliated conglomerates who, like Hitler's bureaucracy, work together when it suits them and spend the rest of the time squabbling over whose way is the best way. Such is the nature of tyranny. And if indeed my read is correct, it only remains to be asked, in lieu of compliance through lofty social engineering matrices, woke capitalism and ESG investing, what means will they employ next, now that we're wise to the game and banging on the boardroom door demanding answers? In lieu of the great beautification and its attendant propaganda triumph, what fate now awaits the inhabitants of Theresienstadt? Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Please also subscribe to my Substack at jjdawson.substack.com. And if you'd like to keep in touch, please do follow me on X at RealJJDawson. You can also follow me on Getter, Gab and Minds. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please do give it a like and share it about, because it really helps me out.